I'm Seth Neumann, and I'd like to welcome you to my Union Pacific Oakland subdivision. It's an HO scale layout depicting Union Pacific operations in the San Francisco Bay Area in the spring of 1999. It covers about 22 real miles of railroad from Radom, which is East Pleasanton up in the East Bay, down to Milpitas in the southern end of the San Francisco Bay near San Jose. And we'll be walking over to Milpitas and begin our tour. Milpitas Yard is an industry support yard supporting the NUMMI, that's the New United Motor Manufacturing Plant in Warm Springs, which we'll get to in a moment, and it serves as the base for the LRV 54 local. That's the local Roseville District number 54. We use Milpitas for limited interchange with the BNSF Warm Springs Turn, which is a trackage rights train that they got the rights to in the 1996 merger agreement. In addition, Milpitas handles interchange with the UP Mission Bay Local, which serves the South Bay and the San Francisco Peninsula industries over the Joint Powers Board trackage rights. You may know that better as the Caltrain line. There are elements of the former UP Milpitas Yard which served the Ford plant in Milpitas, which is now the Great Mall Shopping Center, and the Southern Pacific Warm Springs Yard, which was adjacent to NUMMI in the Milpitas Yard design. The backdrop image of Mission Peak and Mount Allison is a set of 15 images photo-stitched together to provide a panorama ranging from Milpitas down to South San Jose. Milpitas has an engine track and a yard office, and several rail-served industries. Those industries include Smurfit Stone Paper Box Warehouse, which receives paper box cars from suppliers in Missoula, Montana, and in British Columbia. Waukesha Electric, which makes industrial power transformers, and the flat cars are used for the transformers are typically 4-truck depressed center cars, and until the plant shut down in the mid-2000s was a fairly common sight in the East Bay. The Gibraltar Avenue water treatment plant, which receives chlorine cars, and is also the home to a very cute little animated gate. Franklin Distillers, which receives insulated box cars, and Milpitas Materials Batch Plant for cement, which receives cement cars and gravel hoppers. Right now that's represented by a mock-up, but we do intend to have a full model. Now, many of these structures are lit, and many support interiors. If you look at Waukesha Electric, you can see lights on in the office and some computer monitors and workers at their desks. Over in the transformer plant, you can see transformers ready for shipment. At the far end, there's an open door, which is handy for operators to spot their cars and see where the end of the track is. Smurfit Stone has a receiving dock. You can see rolls of paper and paper box stock. Engine facilities here are pretty minimal, consisting of a track where engines can be tied up between jobs, and there's a space for a fuel truck to come along and refuel the engines without them having to return to Oakland for service. We're going to follow the LRV 54 local as it proceeds from Milpitas out to East Pleasanton, or Radom as it was called, and returns. And this is based on a Southern Pacific train that goes back to well into the 70s, and Western Pacific had a similar job working out of Milpitas Yard up to about the time of the 1982 merger with Union Pacific. As we pull out of Milpitas, we pass the Coyote Creek area, Coyote Creek drains into San Francisco Bay, and it's part of a scene separator to keep the NUMMI scene in Warm Springs, which is a real 4 miles or so from Milpitas. As we come around the corner, we get to the Snowboy bulk transfer facility. Now, Snowboy is named after a packing plant, and they used to have a picture of a guy who sort of looked like the Michelin Man in white. He was the Snowboy, and they packed oranges and citrus. There's a set of plastic pellet silos. Now, there actually is not a silo operation at Snowboy, but this was a plausible industry since there are quite a few pellet hoppers coming into Snowboy, and we did want a visual block between Snowboy and the Milpitas industries. We also added centrifugal separator and a set of pumps, and we have a little scene of pipe being repaired with a welding rig out there. So this is all more in the line of creating some eye candy to draw your attention away from the fact that the scenes are way too close together. NUMMI is an acronym for the New United Motor Manufacturing Incorporated plant. It was a former GM plant that became a joint venture between General Motors and Toyota, and it lasted until the recession in 2008 when GM filed for bankruptcy. But in 1999, it's making mostly Toyota Tacoma pickup trucks as fast as it possibly can, also making Corollas, mostly rebadged as Geo Prisms, and it's being served several shifts a day. It ran 2 shifts 6 days a week. It consists of 5 sub-industries within the plant. A drivetrain track, a general parts track for things like seats and interior parts, a steel track. There's a stamping plant, and it ships stampings to other Toyota facilities in North America and also receives some. For example, pickup truck beds came in from Baja. And then finally at the end, there's an auto rack loader where outbound cars and trucks are loaded into the carriers for transshipment to regional distribution centers. Those of you who are rail fans who've ever driven up Interstate 880 in the East Bay between Newark and Union City have passed the Lehigh cement reload off of Industrial Avenue. In our world, we kind of backed up the Hayward Fault 100,000 years and moved it down to Niles, but it's the building is built by Earl Gerbavon and includes some absolutely spectacular lacy work on the circular outside staircase. I was fortunate to get a tour in the mid-2000s from the manager of the plant, so we have photos of the blueprints and so forth. Anyway, it consists of a silo, and you can see a bulk cement truck. This is a 3D printed model from Baz Trains available on Shapeways. And there's a reload shed that keeps the cement out of the rain. We've got a few other cars in there right now. And a bag warehouse, which is the one you see without the complete roof. Now, if you notice, there's an operating traffic light that's telling the trucks when they can pull into the silo, and a working aircraft warning beacon because the prototype plant is under the flight path of Hayward Air Terminal. That's all achieved by a small Arduino processor, which is hidden in the machine house, and the timing and lighting ramps are all done using a small Arduino. And this is a great solution because the Arduino Pro Mini that we used is about $3 from Amazon or your favorite offshore supplier. One thing we sometimes do in model railroads is to try to find more ways to pack some industry into an area where, for various reasons, usually long-term economic trends, the industry has gone away. The Pabrico plant, Pacific Brick Company, was at the head of Niles Canyon for about 100 years, but had been abandoned for 15 years or so by 1999. However, in the interest of creating a little more interest, we've kept Pabrico alive. It's a shallow backdrop industry, mostly consisting of a couple of Mr. Plaster kilns cut in half and a very nice brick chimney. One of the interesting things here is that in the canyon we have painted backdrops. In places where there's a fairly good field of view, we generally have photo backdrops. Because the layout is compressed, we could not get the viewpoints we wanted from any real place you could stand in the canyon. So my friend Sam Romerstein and I went up and did a photo expedition along with the appropriate topo maps, and concluded that there were some points buried deep within hills that would have the appropriate viewpoint. And when we went to try and look at those views from Google Earth, we discovered that Google Earth will not let you print out a picture from inside a hill. So Sam carefully mapped out the hills we wanted to get, arrayed them on his map, and then essentially ray traced each viewpoint and made a sketch of them, and then painted these hills. Now, what's interesting is that each layer of hills is painted on 1/16 styrene, and there's as many as 10 layers of styrene here. And the edges catch your eye and give a real impression of depth. I think we were successful in capturing a view such that your eye believes that you're 5 miles from this viewpoint to the back of Mission Peak, as opposed to it being 3 inches behind the back track. As we continue up Niles Canyon, we cross Alameda Creek on the Farwell Bridge on the Niles Canyon Railway, which is the former Southern Pacific line. You'll notice that Dave Parks built a very, very nice rendition of one of the pin-connected truss sections and the girder section crossing Highway 84. You'll also notice we're near Sinol. We didn't have enough room to build the Cal Fire Station, but we did include a CDF truck to give you the flavor of one of the canyon landmarks. In the background, we'll see the 54 local continue its eastward journey through Hearst Siding at milepost 38 on the Oakland sub. We've now come to Pleasanton, milepost 41 on the Oakland sub. And Pleasanton is one of the first areas we did serious scenery and structure work on the layout. And you'll see the Pleasanton Ace Station, which was a kind of an effort of myself and Earl Gerbavon and Wayne Wood. And Wayne laid out the plan of the prototypical station, which of course is on a straight. We had to work it into a curve. And we have a pretty good representation of a modern commuter station. The area behind it has been a little problematic. The Villa Armando Winery was originally a modified Walther's Co-op warehouse that Sam Romerstein built, and it's sort of angled into the wall. And what's interesting is we had no idea what their warehouse looked like because the winery had actually been torn down in 1985 and turned into a huge development. But when we finally found a picture of it from the Tri-Cities Historical Society, we were very, very close. The building had originally not had an interior or any lighting, and just recently I built a small interior, a figure, a couple of interior crates, some photographs for a background representing stacks of wine to be shipped, and added some exterior and interior lighting. And over here we have the Pleasanton Depot, which is a former Southern Pacific depot. It was a Type 22. Originally David Parks had built it based on the building as it stands having been relocated. It has a mortgage company at one end and Senro Sushi at the other, and I think there's a hair salon in the middle. While it's a good building and actually fairly accurate in terms of what the modernized building is like, it's a little too big. So we've started building a new structure based on actually a left-handed AMB kit. Now again, it's a laser kit, and what we've done is cut new sides using the laser cutter and essentially made new laser cut parts with the appropriate tabs and slots that snap right into the original kit. And that kit will have a lit interior where I'm going to have a little animation driven by a stepper motor in one of the Arduinos we talked about earlier, so the waiter can be seen moving back and forth inside the building, and some lit office areas, and we have some interesting ideas for animation. So I guess John will come back and we'll have another follow-up session to discuss that as it comes along. Denver and Rio Grande 3015 was the second to the last GP30 in Rio Grande paint. Apparently it gave up the ghost on this run and has been set out at Hearst Siding. 54 continues on with a pair of ex-Mopac GP38-2s. The 54 has reached the end of its run and turned on the Y and is now returning back towards Milpitas, where it will switch Trailing Point Industries. Here in Pleasanton, the major customer is Kaiser Sand and Gravel. Kaiser actually shut down in '99, which is one of the main reasons for setting the layout in the spring of '99. The Kaiser Sand and Gravel breaker was built by Earl Gerbavon and won third place at the 2011 NMRA National. It's a very accurate model of a gravel breaker where Earl researched gravel plants and found a site on the web that essentially lets you create your own gravel breaker for companies mostly in East Asia. So this design is plausible and would actually work. So the 54's power has cut off the train and is backing down the spur into Kaiser Sand and Gravel to pick up gravel loads. So one of the issues we often have in designing our layouts is finding some room for a workshop. You know, it's wonderful if you have the space for a separate workroom, but in my case, really the space I had included the workspace. So what I've done is to extend the staging yard, which comes around behind you, the viewer, and that left me room for an old desk to be extended into a workspace. I've got room for a couple of projects at once, and some storage over here on this side, and room for a computer behind me, which I use for decoder programming and so forth. I've got a NCE power cab for my programming track, and if you look carefully in the corner, you can see the NCE command station for the main layout power. I have some room for some electronic instruments that I use for both the layout and some of the products my little model railroad electronics company builds. And then down here I have my main workspace. It's a wooden butcher block about 5 feet long and 2 feet deep. And then I have a plate glass, which gives me a nice flat surface to assemble structures on. As soon as I move some stuff out of the way, you can see a laser cut structure we're modifying, as we talked about in Pleasanton, and the angle plates and the glass give us a nice straight surface to keep everything square. So anybody can assemble a nice square building using these techniques. Lots of storage for tools, although we could always use more. A desoldering station and a soldering iron. Two important things to do if you're doing any electronics. Don't cheap out on your soldering iron, get a good one. Third hand type affair, which is handy for holding things in place. Digital calipers, one of the great tools of model railroading. And we also do some electronic assembly here. Here's a series of occupancy detectors for DCC Railroad, and these come in panels of 6, so we're just checking them out. The Oakland sub is dispatched via a CTC type console. The reason for that is primarily the prototype did, and Western Pacific used a traffic control system, which was the Union Switch and Signal version. Then when the Union Pacific took over, they converted it to their computer-based dispatching system called CAD. Now, our initial thought was that we were going to try and model CAD as closely as possible, but a friend of ours, retired UP dispatcher Breezy Gust, convinced us that CAD was a little hard to use and might not be the best tool for a layout where we expected to have visiting operators. And he recommended that we talk to a mutual friend, Rodney Black, who wrote a program called Computer Aided Traffic System, or CATS, which is based on the Digicon system that SP used prior to the UP merger. So technically, this style of dispatching was never done on this piece of railroad, but it has the benefit that it's very, very easy for a user to learn, and surprisingly easy for anyone with a basic understanding of railroad signaling to set up. So that's a big win. CATS rides on top of JMRI, so if you've got JMRI running, you build a simple panel pro panel and then run CATS on top of that. And what you get is a panel that looks something like this, which is a point-and-click system. What we're looking at this end is our staging yard, which was over the workbench that you just saw. Then we come through Pleasanton, or I should say Radom, with a gravel pit, Pleasanton, Hearst Siding, Niles Junction, the NUMMI plant, Warm Springs, where we had the Snowboy bulk transfer, and back into the yard. Works pretty easily. If you want to flip a switch, you just click, the switch moves, click back. If you want to give control of a control point to a crew so they can do their own switching. You grant authority. See, it goes blue. You can take that back. If I want to set up a route for, say, I have a train going from here to here, I would just start assigning... well, it works better if I point it the right way first. Track blocks. Notice when I get up to the last one, it won't let me do that because there's a conflict. This track is already occupied. So I'll just bring the train up as far as here. Now I talk about trains. One thing I can do is by right-clicking, I can bring up the option to position a train. So let's say our 54 local is out there at Radom Tower. I can position him here. Notice the train symbol now shows up. If I have a crew, I can assign that train to a crew. So say Dave Connery wants that train, and Dave's on the 54. We'll accept it. Notice the 54's local has now gone to Goldenrod, so now I can track that. Now, supposing I'm a new dispatcher, and I don't really remember what these jobs do. I can right-click on the train, and I get a little summary of all that train's work. What's its number, its symbol, where is it coming from, where is it going to, and who the crew is. So by doing all of this, I can easily see what's going on and keep track of a much larger number of trains than I'd be able to do otherwise. If you're doing CTC type dispatching in the modern era, I can't recommend CAT strongly enough. Well, thanks for visiting the UP Oakland sub. We've really enjoyed having you, and hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. Stay tuned, and we'll be back at some point in the future to update you on our progress.